It's funny that you say uncertainty because that is something that I really have struggled with in the past. I like certainty. I don't like risk. I like to remove every possible risk, but I'm learning to be comfortable with uncertainty, and I'm learning to say, I'm just going to do the work. I can't predict the outcome per se, and the outcome is uncertain, but I'm just going to learn to be comfortable with that. And so it's been another mindset shift of accept the uncertainty because nothing in life is certain, and that's been a real struggle for me. Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. It's our 3-year anniversary episode. Andy Wang is joining me for an in-depth discussion about Richer Soul, the past, present, and future. Stay tuned. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Epictetus. Self-mastery depends on self-honesty. Know first who you are and what you're capable of. Just as nothing great is created instantly, the same goes for the perfecting of our talents and aptitudes. We are always learning, always growing. It is right to accept challenges. This is how we progress to the next level of intellectual, physical, or moral development. Still, don't kid yourself. If you try to be something or someone you are not, you belittle your true self and end up not developing in those areas that you would have excelled at quite naturally. Within the divine order, we each have our own special calling. Listen to yours and follow it faithfully. I feel like I'm living this, taking small steps to constantly improve. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm in the middle of starting a new chapter in my life. We'll dig a lot more into that as we go through today's episode. Well, I'm glad to be ahead for 2020. We've recorded almost all the episodes for the entire first quarter. We have some really exciting shows coming up with some really great guests. The theme for this year is 2020 Clarity. How's your vision for what this year will bring? It's amazing how much we can accomplish over time when we are clear with where we are going and have a destination in mind. Where are you at in the journey? I'd love to hear from you and how you're doing. I have a sprint planned for the next 3 months, with Profit Comes First, and a few more for later in the year. It's all about focused attention to a particular theme for 3 months at a time. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a look at last week's action step, which was to keep track of all your giving in one place. It's really going to help you at tax time if you did that. You can also plan out your giving for 2020 based on reviewing 2019. We have our giving plans already mapped out. Once again, you see the principles of being intentional in life. My good friend Andy Wang from Inspired Money is going to join us today and help to interview me. You can hear his backstory in episode 49. So today we celebrate the 3-year anniversary and much more. Let's bring Andy on. Welcome back to Richer Soul, Andy Wang. It's great to have you join us today.
It's great to be back, Rocky.
And I'm excited for today's conversation. Andy, you've already been on the show, and if people want to go back and listen, your episode is number 49, Inspired Money, and they can learn about your story. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about my journey and the 3-year anniversary of the podcast.
Happy anniversary to Richer Soul.
The podcast is 3 years. Yeah, Richer Soul's probably about 5.5 years. The first 2.5 as a blog were really a struggle. I'm not traditionally a great writer, and I'm working on that, and I'm getting better. But it's not a process that I was very good at. And so trying to get that whole process down was really a struggle. When I switched over and started doing the audio and doing the podcast, things just exploded. It better fit the way I work.
Is that because of time, or you just don't enjoy writing that much?
I have ADD. So when I write, I literally leave out half the words. And I was never much of an editor. And so if you think about someone writing something with ADD who doesn't go back and read it and think through it and do that, it's a struggle for me. Because, J.D. Roth and Paula Pant is the same way. It kind of shocked me. They spend 1 hour writing an article, and then they spend 9 to 10 hours editing it. And that's just not my style. And on top of that, I don't think I ever realized that's how much work went into writing. I'm more about, create, get it done, move along. And so with a podcast, there's a ton of upfront work that goes on as I go study the guest. But then the actual creating of the content is rather easy. It just kind of flows from the conversation, and then somebody else edits at the end. So then it makes it a bit easier, I think. It's just fits me better.
Well, I think you've got the gift of gab, Rocky.
So if you listen to the podcast, though, and this is kind of one of those secrets, if you want to build a great relationship, you should only be talking 10 to 20% of the time, and the other person should be doing the talking 80% of the time. So I think I have guests who have the gift of gab, and I just kind of orchestrate the conversation so that I can learn what I want to learn from them.
So I love that Richer Soul, the podcast, has hit 3 years. You've had the blog. You're looking at 5 years total. And I appreciate the differences between writing and then audio only with the podcast. I'm curious because I've gone back and listened to some of your older shows. I know that your episodes 1 through 9 are very foundational in really establishing some of the key themes for Richer Soul. What have you learned in the 3 years?
So the same foundations still apply, and none of the foundations have changed. What has changed is how much depth I've gone into each of those particular foundations and how much more knowledge I've gained in each of the particular areas. And so when we first started off, we talk about balance between those areas. And now I no longer use the word balance because I learned people struggle with balance. And what happens is if you try to balance one area of your life, and then you try to balance another area of your life, and then you start balancing the third area of your life, the first one falls apart and the second one starts to wobble. And so now I've kind of gone to the concept of harmony. And harmony is much more, hey, all the areas of your life are kind of running in sync. And it's up to you to kind of create the music of your life. And so at different parts of your life and at different parts of your song, different areas are going to come to the front. But yet the other things are still running in the background. And you're never going to be perfectly balanced, but you're going to be in harmony. And then I think for each of the areas, I've really increased my knowledge of what's really important. So I think one of the things, there's the difference between what's true and what's the truth. And so it's kind of hard to explain, but there are many things that are true, but they're not at that higher level order of the truth, that kind of overarching principle. And so I think I've been getting closer and closer to learning those principles and implementing them. And then also just sharing with the audience of that next step. I'm getting guests who continually take us another step down the path and closer to, I don't know that perfection is the right word, but closer and closer to the ideal situation in my life. And hopefully people are finding it in theirs as well.
So you think after 3 years of producing content and bringing on a lot of great guests, you've had so many great guests on the show. Are you trying to take it to the next level now, trying to get to that truth versus just what's true?
I think so. Recently, and these episodes haven't come out yet, there's a bunch of production and process. I think most of the beginning of next year is already recorded, or pretty much by the time this episode drops, we'll probably be out to April for recordings. So that's how far ahead we are at this point. There's a couple of guests who are coming on, and they're talking about some certain concepts. And I think the one that really has kind of got me hooked at the moment, it's a Japanese phrase. It's called ikigai. And it's the intersection of what you love to do, what you're good at doing, which I think people think of as passion, but then it adds into it, and it's something that fills a need in the world. That means people are needing this and requiring it, and they're looking for it in the marketplace. But more important than people want it is that they're willing to pay for it. And when you can find the intersection of all of those things, and your life and your purpose and your work all kind of come together like that, it's almost like, I guess the best way to say is you're literally in the flow. Everything you're doing is moving you as a person in your work and your give back to the world all in the same place. And I think over these 5.5 years, I think I've kind of figured out what is it that I can help people with, and what is it that they really need help with, and that they're willing to pay for. And that's that whole launch of Profit Comes First, which I think was back in August, September that started to take off. And it's been extremely well received in the marketplace. Everyone's like, it's a no-brainer type of business. And it's something that I'm good at and I understand and I can help people with. So it's been a lot of fun, but I think that's where it's going. And it's not just about the money. So it's not that we're getting the money so that we can have wealth. It's about having the money to give you what I've spent a good amount of my work life having, which is freedom. It's the time freedom to do what you want, to be able to live on your terms, and to be able to connect and give back as well. And so I feel like all the pieces are now clicking into place, and we'll see how it goes. You never know what the outcome is. Maybe I have to pivot again.
I like the idea of ikigai. I think I've heard Tim Ferriss talk about it because I know that he studied Japanese, and I think he spent time in Japan. So my understanding is that it's kind of a convergence of doing what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for. It sounds like Profit First is kind of all four of those things, is it not?
It is for me, yes. I mean, I started out teaching accountants in a major corporation how to use VisiCalc. VisiCalc was the first electronic spreadsheet. And that was back in the early 80s. I was still in high school when I was doing that. So for me, spreadsheets were just like a natural thing that I grew up understanding and building. And I use spreadsheets in every single part of my life. Literally, our grocery list is a spreadsheet. And it's designed around the order of the supermarket, so that when you fill out what we need for the week and you go through the supermarket, you're not going back and forth. You just follow the spreadsheet. I do a lot of events, and all my events are spreadsheeted. So if I need to do another picnic this year for the homeowners community, I literally copy last year's spreadsheet. It has the notes for what changes we're going to make. And I've got my grocery list and my order list and all the things that I need to get done in order to make the event happen. So rather than sitting down and having a long planning meeting and having discussions, it's like, oh, we're going to do this event. Here's the process and the order. It's in the spreadsheet, and you just execute. And so things get so much faster to accomplish. And that, again, goes back to that underlying theme of time freedom. And speaking of Tim Ferriss, I mean, I literally have lived the 4-hour work week for most of my life as far as work goes. And his 4-hour body was phenomenal. That was the book that helped me to lose 50 pounds and started me on my journey to be in the best shape that I've ever been in.
Yes. And to your credit, you've maintained that. You've kept the weight off and you've been able to still enjoy food, but live in a healthier way, which is fantastic.
For the most part, I failed a little this year. I gained some weight.
Well, it's the holiday season.
No, it's been a year-long thing. I've been bouncing up and down with weight, and it's been a bit of a struggle. I tried an app, and the app wanted me to eat much more, and so I actually gained weight. So I'm like, no more of this app. It was telling me you can't eat as little as you want to, and I'm like, I can't deal with that. So I've gone back to the basics of what I started with, and we'll see how it goes. Bodies are very weird in that they mess with you. You know, if you cut your eating, they cut the energy burn. And so even if you eat less, you still don't lose weight sometimes. So I'm playing around with it. Hopefully I'll figure it out again.
Sounds Tim Ferriss-like that you're experimenting on your body.
Every week I do measurements. Every week it's Saturday or Sunday morning. Saturday morning is measurement morning. So I take all my measurements and I plot them so I can look at the entire year and see. I don't just use weight. I use body measurements at certain parts of the body so I can track if I'm growing or shrinking, and in addition to how much I weigh.
Well, I like the way that that you're measuring personal growth, whether it is physical fitness or your financial freedom, all different areas of your life. I know that one of the big themes for Rich Your Soul is escaping the rat race. And this is not something that you're just coaching on at this point. This is something that you're living. Can you share with us how you escaped the rat race and kind of what changes have taken place? Because all of this is like within the last 3 years, pretty major changes for you.
It is. I think that whole process started probably about 8 years ago. I had switched jobs again 8 years ago. I was with a company before that for probably 10 years, 12 years, something like that. And I decided to make a change in my life. And I started a new job. And then along with starting the new job, I started to really say, what is the next step after this job? What does my retirement look like? And to me, retirement, it's the wrong word because I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. I think it was more about what will I do in retirement and enjoy and that I could make money at, but not have it be a rat race kind of a job. I don't want to work 40, 60, 80 hours a week. And coming back to the concept that we talked about before of the Ikigai, how do I find that place? And so I think it's been a 7 or 8 year long journey along that process. Part of that was getting in health. Part of it was mindset shifts, which are some of the underlying things that we talk about. And then it was taking back time. So yeah, earlier this year, I've always had a job that I've had a ton of flexibility and the ability to juggle life and work. So I was never in one of these crazy rat race jobs. And yet, in spite of that, when you have companies that are in decline, things just don't go well. And so earlier this year, it started to get to be like that. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done with all of it. I don't want to stay in the industry. I did it for the money. It paid really well and I was cool with it. I enjoyed it. There were points, I think, in the past where it was thrilling. But as you know, the world changes. And even in your industry, you've seen a massive amount of regulation come in that literally prevents you from doing what's right. And I think that's the same thing that happened in the industry I was in. It just so much regulation about what you could say and how you could say things and how you could help people. It just became, I'm done. And so that's where this whole Richer Soul thing was. It was building over the last 5.5 years. Actually, it was probably longer than that. It was probably 6 or 7 years. Took 1.5 years to come up with a name and a direction. But that has finally come to fruition. All those years of thinking about what is it that I really want? How can I help? Where are my skills and how do they fit? And so earlier this year, I left work for good and now I'm home, working out of the house, having an absolute blast. I get up every morning even more excited than I used to be before and just going out and trying new things.
In making that transition, how much uncertainty is there? Like when you wake up in the morning, because it seems that it would be more unstructured. Maybe it's not.
It's not. So I've always had an unstructured life. I've never worked in it. I think in my entire working career, I only spent about 3 months where I was in an office all day. The rest of my working career has been relatively unstructured. So I'm used to the unstructured life. I expected when I left work that I was going to have a time for decompression and slowing down and just kind of letting things sit and see what happened. And the opposite happened. I turned on my automated calendar and people were putting appointments on my calendar, clients and people that wanted to meet me and all these types of things. And so that all of a sudden just took off. And I'm pretty disciplined in that I've got a morning routine with or without work. I get up and I do certain things. So that whole phase was in place. I think because I've been building this for all these years and doing the work, everything was in place. It wasn't, hey, what do I do today? It's, oh, it's time to execute. And I now have the time to execute because I've got time freedom from work. And I'm also almost totally time free from family obligations as well. So I think all the pieces have been building and they finally came together. And so I think if you're just starting out and you don't know what you're going to do, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty and struggle in the uncertainty. Because I built everything already, it was literally, I had my appointment set for 2 months that, hey, I'm going to resign on this day and I have my appointment to join Profit First 2 days later and do the next thing. So everything had been planned months in advance. So it was much more just execute and go. And it's been busier than I wanted it to be. Plus, on top of that, there were so many trips in between FinCon, ProfitCon, my Mastermind. We had to go to a wedding. I've been traveling and I feel like I'm now finally settling down. And the end of the year for us is usually shut down. So we tend to take 2 weeks of doing very little to nothing and just spending that time cleaning up the loose ends of the year. So I think I'm finally getting there. But it's been interesting. It's funny that you say uncertainty because that is something that I really have struggled with in the past. I like certainty. I don't like risk. I like to remove every possible risk, but I'm learning to be comfortable with uncertainty. And I'm learning to say, I'm just going to do the work. I can't predict the outcome per se, and the outcome is uncertain, but I'm just going to learn to be comfortable with that. And so it's been another mindset shift of accept the uncertainty because nothing in life is certain. And that's been a real struggle for me.
I guess on a professional front, stepping right into profit first after quitting your job, that's almost like starting your next job immediately. It's not like you took a week or 2 weeks to decompress and kind of take in that transition. It's almost like starting a new job the next day.
It is, but Profit First has never been a 40-hour week job, and it never will be. And I'm highly, highly clear on that. And so things will go a little slower, and I will not accept all clients. I only want to work with people that I want to work with, and I'm not looking for a massive client load. And so sometimes I have to stop myself and say, wait a minute, I'm not trying to build an empire. Relax, breathe, and take your time.
How did you learn about Profit First?
I was doing the financial coaching on the personal side, and I was having a lot of conversations, meeting different people. And somewhere along the line, someone said to me that they introduced me to the concept of Profit First, and they also introduced me to the concept that business owners were just as bad as people with money. And that was a major aha moment for me. I was like, what do you mean? If you're in business, I just assumed business owners understood the business of business. It never dawned on me that they don't look at their financials. It never dawned on me that they don't actually know how to do business. I just assumed they did. But what it is they all love what they're doing. So whatever your business is, people might love making pizza, or they might love creating software, or whatever it is that's their industry. But most of these people have never been taught about how to actually look at your financial statements. And now that I'm working with clients and doing this, I get it. We have conversations constantly, and they're like, yeah, no, I never looked at that. No, I don't look at that. No, I don't look at that. I'm like, how do you run a business without looking at the financials if your goal is to be profitable? And again, we're not chasing profit for the sake of having money. We're chasing profit so that you have the money to be able to fuel whatever it is your passion is in your business, and to be able to pay your employees, and to be able to handle taxes and all of that. So I think it was a lot of ahas. So that's where that intersection of what do people need and what are people willing to pay for? Because the biggest struggle, I think, on the financial coaching side personally is most people aren't willing to pay for financial coaching. And the reality is, especially if you're young, literally a handful of hours of me giving you financial coaching ensures that you're going to be a millionaire. So the outcome is massive, but people aren't willing to pay for that. And then they get stuck, and the friction occurs, and then they get caught into the drift, and they never do anything about it. Business owners are much more willing to pay to become profitable. And so you've got a need, and you've got, on top of that, the willingness to pay, which comes back to me reading spreadsheets since I was in high school, and I enjoy it. So all of it comes together. We come back to that whole concept.
So this pivot, it sounds very much like a shift from financial coaching individuals to working with business owners, and the profit first approach by Mike Michalowicz, very well aligned with what you were doing and your values and richer soul. So it's a pivot, but it's not a drastic change.
No, it's not a drastic change. And I had to have the conversation with myself. Do I join with Michael, and do I do profit first, or do I just do my own thing? So I had already bought the domain name Profit Comes First long before that. What I realized is I could do this myself, but I would spend a lot of time creating all of the materials and the processes that I needed to help clients. In addition, I'd be on my own, so I'd have to struggle a little bit more. But by working with Michael and their group, they handed me everything. And so it just made it so much easier to implement and take action that it was a no-brainer. And it's been a wonderful relationship. They've helped me a lot, and the resources that they're providing me are going to allow me to make 2020 just even faster. I think there's going to be courses coming out. There'll be live teaching seminars going on. So all of those things, instead of me having to sit down and create everything from scratch, they're giving me a lot of the material, which again, it comes back to the whole thing. It's about time. It's really freeing me up from time to just basically go implement. What I'm adding to him is that in addition to doing Profit First, I ask all of my clients to have a life plan. And if they don't, then I use Michael Hyatt's book, Living Forward, a proven plan to get out of the drift and live your life. So we kind of combine the two of those. So it's, hey, we're going to make your business profitable. Now, how does that fit in with the rest of your life? So my conversations are not just about business. It's the uniqueness that I bring is we talk about your business and how is your business in harmony with your life and everything else that you want to do and your give back and your kids, and how do all these pieces fit together so that you're not living in silos? It comes back to the whole concept of harmony. And rather than reinvent everything, I just find the best of everything and help people implement it. We'll be back to the anniversary episode in a moment. Are you familiar with Parkinson's Law? Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. In the same way, your spending seems to keep up with your earnings, and you have lifestyle creep. Same thing happens to business owners. You seem to keep spending more and more as it's available. That's the principle we work with at Profit Comes First to reduce what you see as available. By removing your taxes, your pay, and your profit, and forcing you to run your business on what's left, you'll find a way, and you'll always have a profit. And you'll have money for taxes, and you'll have money to ensure that you get paid. Having a profit-first professional on your side helps to ensure success. Check it out at profitcomesfirst.com. And at the bottom of the page, there's 3 links. You can get 2 free chapters of the Profit First book. You can email me, or you can even schedule a quick intro call to see how I can help your business increase profitability. Remember, this is about more than just money. It's about creating the fuel that allows you to run the business of your dreams. What are you waiting for? Let's help you to put you on that profitable track for 2020. And now, back to our anniversary episode.
Rocky, you mentioned that Profit First is something that you could have implemented on your own, but because you value your time, you understand that making the choice to work with Mike Michalowicz's team can save you time and help you do things faster and better. I know that you don't shy away from making investments. You also mentioned the Mastermind. I know that you work with Aaron Walker. When you're making that decision, should you do it on your own or should you make an investment? What is that process like?
So that's a struggle, right? All of these people have wonderful, wonderful copy that literally sucks you in. And that's something that I struggle with. Even just this morning, I was looking at something. I'm like, oh, maybe I should sign up for this. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that today. So I think it's you've got to sit down and ask yourself. And this is the other thing that I learned. I never realized this. I'm one of those people who, when I buy a course, I actually go through and finish it. And you're part of the FinCon community. If you ever talk to anyone in the FinCon community, you'll learn people buy all these courses and half the people never open them. And then the amount of people who actually go through the course and finish it you're talking single digits. So I try and make sure that if I'm going to do something, I will take the time to go through and at least actually do the work and finish it and do that. But yeah, I think it's a struggle. There are different parts of life. So I was just having a conversation with someone this morning at the gym. We were talking about real estate, and he has time, but he doesn't have money and he doesn't have knowledge. So he's spending his time gaining knowledge and doing the work because he can't afford to pay somebody. I'm the exact opposite. I go, I have the knowledge, I have the money. What I don't have as much of, or I don't want to give up as much, is time. So if I can pay somebody to help me move on faster, then that's what I do. And this mastermind that I'm in now is probably, I don't know, maybe the third, the fourth, the fifth mastermind I joined. A lot of them didn't work. They didn't work out because the commitment level of the other people. And also having a strong leader to lead the conversation in the mastermind and having the right people at the table. I think that's a big thing. You've got to have the right people at the table. They have to have the right mindsets, and then you have to have the structure in place to execute on it.
When did you start your current mastermind, and how has that influenced your pivot and changes that you've made recently?
So I started my current mastermind a little over a year ago, maybe almost a year and a half ago. And when I made the decision to make the pivot and to it's hard to walk away from easy money, right? It's hard to say, you know what, I'm just going to go do this on my own. We have a kid in college and we have another kid about to start college. So you know how expensive college is. We've got these massive bills. And I told my kids I got to figure out how to pay for them, but it's still sitting there. The mastermind really helped me to go through that whole pivot, to stand behind me as I made the decision, and to support me and to push me forward as I was making those changes. We've had a lot of people from my mastermind as guests on the show, and more of them are coming. But if I've got a question in a particular area of business, I now have someone I can pick up the phone and call and have a conversation with. Part of this whole shift was upping my LinkedIn game, and we're going to have an episode on how do you up your LinkedIn game? How do you create your profile? How do you make your LinkedIn profile such that people actually want to connect with you? I got access to all of that and to great information and to a ton of that because I was part of the mastermind. So it just opens up a lot of doors. And actually, the people who introduced me to Profit First are in my mastermind, but I was not in the mastermind at that point. There's actually people in my mastermind who I've known before I was in the mastermind or had conversations. So I think they've had a tremendous impact on the actions that I've taken in introducing me to opportunity, helping me even craft my messaging and my title in all of these different types of things. What I'm doing right now is I'm being a virtual CFO for small businesses. The problem is if you talk to small businesses and say you're a virtual CFO, they freak out. The word CFO scares them, or they don't think they need one. And so it's learning the lessons from others and having them help you craft those messages and work through how to price and how to do all of these different types of things. I've had tremendous help from people in my mastermind with all of those different parts of it.
Is it safe to say that you may not have made these changes in such a timely fashion, and you may not have even made the change if not for the mastermind?
It's possible that if not for the mastermind, I may have just said, you know what, I'm just going to go work for another company and go do something, like stay in the industry and go do something different. Because my original goal was not to work so much in retirement. But yet I think the closer I got to it and the more I learned, I realized that not working in retirement was probably not going to be a good idea, because then you become stagnant, right? And so it was, how do you figure out a life that truly serves you and allows you to grow and allows you to do the rest of it? I could have had I waited another 5 years, what would have probably happened is I would have done very much similar to what I'm doing, but I wouldn't have done it with a profit motive. I would have just done it as I felt like it. So I think it has had major impact. It's allowed me to start sooner and to make a bigger impact.
Rocky, I heard you say before that at some point in your career, you realized that it wasn't money that was making you happy, and therefore you focus more on experiences, and you advocate the importance of having something like having a bigger purpose. And that's important for our fulfillment and really motivating us and driving us forward. When we look at, because it's a time of year when everybody's setting goals and thinking about clarity for next year. What are your plans, and why is Vision 2020 important?
So I think the biggest thing that I have learned in all these conversations, both with people on the podcast and people directly and people that I've coached, is nobody knows what they want. Nobody has clarity. And so I think that is a major portion of that. And then, you start, the year is 2020 and it becomes, because I got LASIK done last year and they fixed it this year. So now I have essentially 2020 vision. I can see without having to wear any glasses, which was a dramatic change. So it's just Vision 2020 just kind of sounded like a perfect title. And then it's Vision 2020 clarity. What I've learned is when you have clarity in life, when you know what you want and you tell the universe what you want, things happen. And I don't think it's magical. I don't think it's woo-woo. I think it's just, hey, I'm going over here. I'm doing this, and this is the direction I'm going. And you say it out loud to people, people go, oh, I know someone doing that. Or I know someone who needs your help. Or I think it just opens doors. It's just, and when you know what you're doing and you're focused in that way, I think it makes it much easier for you to do things and to make decisions. Once you have clarity, it's so easy to make decisions. So, for example, you say to yourself, hey, I'm going on vacation next year and I'm going to London. Somebody tells you that there's airfare on sale for San Francisco. You easily can make a decision. I'm not going to San Francisco. I'm going to London. Can you find me airfare to London on special? That's where I'm going. It removes so much of the friction that comes with decision making, because then you say, this is my goal. This is where I'm going. Does it fit within my plan or doesn't it? And if it doesn't, you can push it out and you can say no. And saying no is a very big part of this, I think. When you have clarity, it becomes easier to say no. Hey, I'm going to London. Thank you for the offer, but no, thank you, because it doesn't fit with what I'm doing and where I'm going. So I think for most people, and I think I'm going to constantly be bringing that theme out, find clarity in your life. There's tons of programs to do it. We just had 2 guests on who each have their own programs that are out there to teach you how to figure out clarity in your life. Use one of theirs. Use Michael Hyatt's. I don't care what you do. Figure it out for yourself and start taking action. And I think that's one of the things, when they talk about Ikigai, they talk about something. This isn't something that occurs in 6 months or 3 months or 1 year. They're talking about For some people, it's 30, 40, 50 years for it to come together. Some people get lucky and they get it in a year or 2 years or 3 years. Some of us, like me, spend until their 50s trying to figure it all out, and that's okay. But once you do, everything becomes easy. My days are so much easier now. It's easy for me to say, what do I want to do? Does it help me with this purpose or doesn't it? And if it doesn't, push it aside.
The plan sounds essential for reaching in realizing that clarity. But on the other hand, it's fluid, right? Because you've had a plan, but you make adjustments along the way, which has included starting a podcast, I think around age 50, and you continue to make changes. How do you know, or how often do you update your plan? How do you know when to pivot and when to really stick to what you wrote down?
So I don't think I've pivoted a lot. I think it's more so, hey, I'm doing X and I'm struggling with it. Is there a better way to do X? So going from a blog to a podcast didn't change what I was doing. It just changed the format that I was doing it in. Simple thing is, it's same thing with like exercise. You know, the 4-Hour Body said, here is a better way to exercise. Here's a better way to eat. So it's, if you're not moving forward, if you don't have the progress you want, and you're not continually moving, then I think it's, hey, is there a better way to do this? And what is the better way to do this? And then try it and see. When I started this podcast, I had no idea if it was going to work. But I was like, I'm going to start. We're going to do it. And if it didn't work, well, then we could have shifted. But when I first started the podcast, I went with the attitude that the podcast is going to help me meet people and it's going to help me learn. If people listen to it, hey, that's just a bonus. And so that kind of also helped with the whole mindset of it and just being able to kind of, it's leaping with a parachute. What is the worst part that would have happened if nobody listened to the podcast? I'd still have great conversations with guests and I'd keep learning and improving.
That's a great aspect of podcasting, that it is a platform and you get to learn so much yourself, and hopefully you'll get some listeners who will tag along for the ride. So you mentioned the word mindset, and before we conclude, I want to know, because over the last 7, 8 years, maybe even longer, 10 to 12 years, that was one of the big things. Besides your physical fitness, you talked about how you had to change your mindset. How has your mindset changed?
So I think one of the big things that kind of for me was that the lens that I look through the world, I just always assumed everyone had a similar lens to me and that we all looked at life the same way. And if you think about it, if you're hanging out with the average, you're the average of the 5 people you're hanging out with. And so they're all probably looking at life very much the same way that you're looking at it. And so you end up in a bubble, right? You're hanging around with people who look at life the way you look at life. And I started to realize that the way that I was looking at life wasn't probably the best way, and that there might be other ways to look at life. And so just over these years, I've been constantly watching and learning from other people and how they look at life. And the other thing that's happened, I think, is there's a lot more stuff now coming out about behavioral economics and why people behave the way they do with money. So I always had that question. To me, it was always like, I don't understand this. It's not hard to save money. It's not hard to build wealth. Why do so many people struggle with it? Part of that was just finding out that people don't have money conversations. People don't even talk about money. They have so many hangups around money. And I never knew that. Because in my world, it was just easy and straightforward. So I think that was one of the things. And then there's just the ability to access information today is night and day. So when I was growing up, information was gold. If you had the information, you essentially had the gold. And it was very hard to figure stuff out. And I think people were very protective of information because it was gold. Today, information is worthless in the sense that you can literally get any kind of information you need today on the internet. Information is everywhere. It's a matter of filtering through and finding out what information is best. And it's also about going through the process. So we had a guest on and we were talking kind of how do you grow from where you are to where you want to be. And one of the things he said is stop going from where you are to where you want to be. Go from where you are to one step ahead of where you are. And that's how you grow to the top, is just by taking those steps. And so I think that's what this whole journey also has been, is just taking those steps, step by step, getting into uncomfortable situations, trying things out, testing things and doing that and letting go. A big part of this is me letting go and being open to other things. I've always been one to want control because that way I reduce risk. If I have control, then I can do that. So it's been very much, I think, of a learning journey of seeing other points of view, of accepting them. And then it's the internal work of no longer reacting, but accepting. So a lot of it is kind of very stoic in philosophy. We can't control what's going on. We just need to learn to accept. And we also need to learn to define what is it that I can change and what can't I change. And so don't try and change things that can't be changed, but focus on changing the things that you can change. And the biggest thing that we can change, and the one that we have the most control over, is ourselves. So change yourself. And you do that by having clarity. Where do I want to go? What do I want in life? What steps do I need to take there? And then doing the hard work. Everyone wants overnight success. And when I lost the weight, that was the number one question everyone had. They were like, well, how'd you do it? What's the secret? And I would say diet and exercise. And that would literally end the conversation. I'm like, do you not want to know what diet, what exercise, how to do this? They're like, no, we want overnight success. But that's never going to happen. You got to do the work. They wanted
to hear that you had a Thigh Master and you just have to buy like one gadget.
Yes.
And that's it.
And it's not that, right? You have to do the hard work. And I think that's where people struggle. They're all looking for everyone's looking for the magic bullet. And part of the reason I think is because they see people and they go, oh, he was an overnight success. But I've talked to all the overnight successes. I've talked to people who are, in a variety of different levels and successes in life. And what you come to realize is there was no overnight success. There was 10 years of hard work behind them to get to that level of success. Even if you look at Bill Gates, I think he spent 10, 15 years at Microsoft, no vacations, just grinding it out time and time again. Warren Buffett didn't make his first billion till I think he was 50. He was literally, reading report after report of financial statements for decades, figuring this stuff out. He was not an overnight success. And I think that's the problem with people. They're all expecting the lottery ticket winner. And yet we all know the lottery ticket winner is usually miserable within 5 to 10 years, and they've lost all their money because they didn't go do the work that's required.
That mindset shift is so very philosophical. Is that what comes with age and experience?
It is. I think what happens, and because I've started to have these conversations with more and more people, and they say, I think it happens sometimes in your 40s. And again, it can happen at a different point in life. You start to say, is this all there is to life? You start to stop chasing status and chasing wealth so much. And you start to say, what does my life really mean? And how do I have significance, and not significance from a status point, but how am I giving back? I think also as your kids get older, you start to have those types of conversations. So yeah, I think I think wisdom comes with age if you continually grow and you start to ask the bigger questions about life. So yeah, I think there is a part of it that is age-based. But I've also seen people who are very wise at a young age. They figured it out earlier. And for those, congrats. That's what I'm trying to do to my kids. I mean, that's a big part of this is how do I teach them to be wise at 21 so that they're much more intentional up front and can achieve this success so much the quicker? Why waste 30 years of your life not moving in the right direction?
So Rocky, congratulations on 3 years of Richer Soul. I want to know what is in store in the future. When you think about future goals for Richer Soul and what you're doing, are you thinking about just the next step, or is it the next step and you also have 5 steps from now?
I think I have more than the next step. I know the next steps are much more process oriented in me learning skills. I think the bigger picture is at some point, I know on the Profit First side, we're going to have courses. We're going to have events. On the Richer Soul side, I don't know what I'm going to do. At some point, we're supposed to have a book. It's, you remember we talked about my writing skills. So my daughter's helping me with it, but she's busy in college. So it has not gotten done anywhere near as fast as it should. I think the podcast will continue. We'll continue to get even better and better guests and just kind of peeling the layers of the onion back and learning more and more. But again, I'm not looking for this to be a $1 million business. So I think it's more about me constantly improving my mindsets, me doing all of that until we hit the next phase of life. So I'm at the phase of life now. One kid's off to college. One kid will be off next year in the summer. So middle of 2020, I already gave up coaching soccer. I'm not doing Boy Scouts anymore, per se. He got his Eagle Scout. We're done with that. I don't have any of my daughter's activities because she's off at college. And robotics literally sucks up probably 10 to 15 hours a week for me. So that's about to go away, which opens up a dramatic amount of time. So I think that'll give me that next stage. But then that stage is only going to last so long because at some point my kids are going to get married and they're going to have kids. And I think at that point, it'll be much more automated on the business side where I'm going to constrict my time again so I can go be a grandfather. So that's probably the long picture. So if you want my coaching services, this is the window. After a certain amount of time, I don't think I'm going to do coaching anymore because of the amount of time that it takes up. But I'm doing it to learn how to better serve people. And then at some point, maybe it'll just be a second book, or maybe I'll create a course if I choose to. I don't know. That goes more to the Richer Soul line, or maybe I just go and spend time helping my grandkids grow up and go back to the cycle of coaching soccer and whatever. I shouldn't say soccer because I don't know what sport they'll be in, but whatever it is that they do, I can go do for them. The principles of coaching are the same regardless of the venue that it's in. And then raising that next generation. So I think that's probably the bigger picture.
I loved that episode, by the way, of Richer Soul when you talked about coaching your kids' teams. And I think that was soccer with your GER approach.
So, yeah, the key there, and GER is essentially gratitude and grace, and then respect, responsibility, and reverence to God. I wasn't teaching kids how to play soccer. I was teaching boys how to be men. That was the purpose of it. We're just going to use soccer as the platform to do that. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
If you have not listened to that episode and you have kids who are playing sports, that's a must listen to episode. And I love it because it is very true. When you talk to great coaches, that's what they say. They say that I'm not really trying to teach the kids football or soccer. I'm trying to teach them character and how to be a better person and how to work together. So I really, really love that one. Rocky, thank you for your Richer Show podcast and all the things that you're doing. You have a grand plan and vision that sounds fantastic. We look forward to seeing how it all plays out. I want to thank you for having me back on your podcast. And I don't know how you want to wrap up, but I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you for coming here and helping me to kind of tell the story. I find having someone else there to have the conversation with helps it flow much better than when I'm trying to do it alone. So I'm eternally grateful for you doing that. And because you have the knowledge of the show, because we've been friends and you have knowledge of what I'm doing, you can help me to better get that message out. And because you have a podcast, you also know how to ask great questions, which you did throughout this entire episode. So thank you, Andy, for coming on and for facilitating and helping me to get my story out.
It's my pleasure. My takeaways are, Rocky is always fantastic with processes. We can all learn by implementing processes to be more efficient, that you have to have a plan because that will give you clarity. And to have a mastermind gives you a lot of positive feedback and gives you like a sounding board to test your ideas and test what you're doing and get some feedback to keep you on track. So all valuable lessons. Thanks so much, Rocky.
And thank you, Andy. Thanks for listening today. I really enjoyed discussing the journey with Andy. I also wanted to share my son's journey. He'll be off to college this year, and the reason is because he was actually born 2 months early. My wife knows that I was upset by the fact that his due date was in October, which meant he would miss the cutoff for school by a few days, and he'd have to spend an entire year waiting to start school. Since he was born 2 months early, his birth date was in time, so he got to go to school early. He was by far the youngest kid in the class, and many times parents held their sons back who were close to the cutoff date. He did struggle in the early part, but over time he caught up and excelled. And as you may have heard, he's going to graduate high school with 49 college credits. I can't imagine what it would have been looked like if we had held him back. Our mindset has always been to push our kids and ourselves forward. As we start 2020, are you clear on your vision? Do you know what you want to achieve and have the plans already in place to execute? Do you have stretch goals you're looking at? Who is on your team to help you execute? If last year didn't bring you the results you wanted, then it's time to take action. Maybe it's with me or someone else. Either way, take action, get clarity. That's the theme for this year. Vision 2020, clarity. For me, I'll be spending the year getting crystal clear on what I want and what I don't want to do. If you're looking for coaching, act quickly. I only plan to have a small number of coaching clients, and then I will no longer take on new clients. And then, of course, pricing will go up a lot. If you're interested in Profit First for your business, head on over to ProfitComesFirst.com. There are links on the bottom of the page to get free chapters of the book or schedule a call with me or send me an email. It's 2020, and it's time for us to have clarity and take action on our goals. I have my plans down for the first quarter and key focuses going forward. I'm going to start focusing on a major theme every quarter and taking action towards it. It's been an amazing 3 years, and I'm excited to see what the next 3 years bring. Don't forget to check out Andy's podcast at Inspired Money. If you're still listening, you must have liked the episode, so share it with a few friends. It can start a conversation, and I'd appreciate it. You can also connect with me on Facebook, on the Facebook page or Facebook group for Richer Soul. You can always get me at rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear how you're doing and how the information I've shared has helped. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week and an amazing 2020. May it bring you clarity.